When I was about 8, my Auntie Jean taught me how to cook. That experience instilled in me a deep sense of connection between preparing and sharing food and the enjoyment of life. It became a celebration of spirituality. People a bit too readily associate spirituality with church, with things that are deeply religious. But the things of the spirit, the essence of who we are as people, are just as likely to show themselves through the everyday elements of ordinary life. For celebrity cook Jo Seagar, spirituality bubbles out through her experiences of food and drink and making and breaking bread with friends and family. Her passion for food is on display at her cooking school, where she encourages students to explore how to get the best out of imported and especially local ingredients.
She's good.
So you like New Zealand food?
Oh yes, definitely, definitely. And very proud of it. I mean, we do in the cooking class that I did yesterday, wonderful salmon. And I ring the salmon farm by 9 o'clock at night. It's on my doorstep, 7 in the morning. Look, I'm just going to rub my hands all over it. And look, you smell, is there any fish? You can't smell a thing, can you? It's that lovely freshness, and it makes sense to me, eat seasonally and regionally.
Well, seasonally is a big bugbear of mine. I get frustrated almost that you can get bad tomatoes all year rather than magic tomatoes.
Yeah, exactly.
Over a season. Is that going to come back? I mean, we've got it with asparagus still, and we've got it with oysters, but there's so few things that mark the season.
Yes, I think you're right, and I think it's terribly important. And anyone would think that perhaps Jamie Oliver had invented this thing. You know, I've now got the tomato and it's in season, but it's what our ancestors have done forever. And I certainly, you know, at 53, remember sitting podding peas on Christmas morning. I mean, it's a faff of a job, isn't it? You spend hours, you eat most of them.
You need to have a sherry in your hand
Yeah,
at the time.
Well, by the time it's almost, you know, Christmas night, by the time you get the pot full. But it's lovely to have frozen peas, and I'm not knocking that, but it is nice to look forward to things. If you wanted a little spud at the mo, what have you got?
The Desiree.
What are they like? Show me what they're By February, you need to do something more than just boil a new spud. We're kind of over that. We want to make them a bit more complicated. I'm actually squashing them with fresh bay leaves underneath, and the flavour of the bay comes up, and you roast them. And
I like
you know,
that.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's good. Thank
it's
you.
just taking the boiled spud to the next stage. But at the beginning of the season, totally plain boiled scrubbed spuddy is wonderful.
Magical. Yeah.
And it makes sense. I mean, in these economic times, you buy, you know, you grow food, you eat locally. That's got to be the story. Those Cornish pasties are so good. I love them. Yes. How much? What can I buy with that? Anything? Yeah, that one will. As soon as, and I can feel them rolling on that breadcrumb. You know, and they've got that fine little.
Do you think
crusty thing.
New Zealanders are losing those cooking skills, the things that certainly my mother taught me?
I'm pleased to hear that.
Yeah.
We've got sweet chilli sauce and lots of chopped herbs. They're so busy being driven to Pilates for babies, to, you know, trombone lessons, soccer practice, taekwondo, all these things that kids do.
Yeah.
They've never sat around a table, you know, and of course they don't have table manners. You think I'm fixated on table manners, but they don't, because they've never sat with granny and auntie and the baby in the high chair, you know, the Italian model, isn't it? But they've never sat around a table, and I think that's the sad thing. Now, everybody, cheers. God bless you all. Here we are. This is the good thing. I always think it's only fruit, 5+ a day. Cheers. Now, I know your mother's told you not to eat and drink at the same time, but you're allowed to today. But if you do that and eat that and then have a mouthful of wine and work out in your mouth how that all tastes great together. And that's how complicated wine and food matching is. Does it taste good, yes or no? It's nothing tricky.
You grew up in Hawke's Bay.
Yes. We had 4 children in the family, but my mother was a lawyer, and in Hawke's Bay, I mean, nobody's mother worked. I can remember Dad being the mother who drove us on the school trip to the honey factory, or whatever the school trip was. Dad went as one of the mothers, because my mother was probably in court that
Right,
day.
yeah.
But we came home from school and we had chores to do, and my father was the great preparer of things. Spuds were peeled, carrots
Yep.
were done, children were bathed, homework was done. I remember him for Christmas getting a penny from somebody, and that was like all his mates thought that was a huge shriek,
Yes.
Dad did those things. He made the costumes, he helped you with the school project. It was different. He was a farmer, but he grew experimental crops and was quite a leader in foodie things
Right.
and quite an influence. He was the first man to grow courgettes.
Gosh, yeah.
Which was a
'Cause
huge
that was a foreign thing.
And I can remember him bringing this home and saying, I don't think these little marrows are going to take off.
They're the fresh ones.
Yeah, I want those kind of,
But also my mother was an experimental cook. We never had a sort of Monday sausages, Tuesday chops, farming, family, fare. She read magazines, and I can remember her reading Epicurean magazines and us having pasta when other kids had macaroni cheese.
Your parents were hosts to other people as well.
Yes, I learnt that great entertaining thing, it's in my blood. And my grandparents too, way back. There was always the wool buyer or someone around the table. There were always extras.
Your religious upbringing?
Anglican.
Anglican?
Pretty traditional
Yep.
Anglican. Hawke's Bay, Sunday school. Everybody was something in those days.
You trained as a nurse.
Yes.
Why did you do that?
I think in my heart I always knew I was going to do that. I trained and did my obstetrics, and I was a charge nurse in the children's hospital in Auckland, and that was wonderful skills. But I think I always knew it wasn't going to be the thing that I did forever.
Fairly early on in your career, you had a particular experience which confirmed something of your understanding
yes,
of faith.
yes,
Can you tell us
yeah.
about that?
That was kind of a special moment, and for me, one of those times that I've always felt God's kind of looking after me or on my shoulder or constantly there. But I had a time when I looked after a man. We used to call it specialing, when it was one nurse to one patient, and I specialed this guy who was dying. Don't know all the details,
Right.
but got to know him really well. And the duty finished at 11 p.m, and at about 22 he just slipped away. And I thought, right, that's how it is, and it was a good thing. And then there came over the hospital intercom thing. Any spare staff, there'd been a big pile up on the motorway, could we get down to casualty A&E and help out? So they said, you go to the ambulance bay, and the ambulance driver came in and he said, quick, I'm on my way to National Women's, with a delivery, and we can't get through because of all the chaos. I've come into Auckland Hospital. I opened the doors and caught the baby as it was delivered. Woman in the back on her own, and
Goodness.
and I delivered this baby. I'd kind of read it in a book and seen a movie in the sixth form, but I just looked at this baby and I thought, one has gone,
Yeah.
and one has arrived, and it's 3 maybe timed minutes, and it was a very, this was the moment I thought, this is the circle of life thing.
You've actually got a comfortableness around death, which a lot of New Zealanders don't, I think it's fair to say.
Yes, a comfortableness, I feel it's a very normal thing. I'm one of the thousands of volunteers in New Zealand for hospice. I've had a lot of time in hospices, and I've had a lot of experience with people dying, and yeah.
Of course, one of the things with people dying is how their children or those close to them are able to relate to them, and quite often they inevitably become the carers, which
Yes.
puts them in a different role somehow, doesn't it?
It does, and I know in my own situation with my father dying, he died at home. He was a patient of South Auckland Hospice. He never left home. People think hospice is about some place with nuns or something,
Yes.
that you go and die in, but 80% of their work would be in homes. But he was an old guy, and he'd been in the war, and he was worn out. quite a black and white kind of guy, you know, and he knew that his time was coming. So he said, you know, I'm not going to hospital. We won't try some new treatment or transfusion. But he said, we'll get the kids all around us. But hospice came in and took over that caring thing so that we could be the roles that we were to my father. My mother could be his wife of 50 years and his lover and his partner and his loved, cherished wife. And she didn't have to be his bedpan person or his...
Yes.
And with all my nursing experience, my brother's a radiologist, he could be the son.
That's a great gift, actually, that hospice
Wonderful.
can enable.
Yeah. He was slipping away, he was comfortable, pain-free. We were his children gathered.
It's good.
Drinking things he'd saved for rainy days. It was a fun time. My siblings, we talk about that as a special time. And, you know, I can remember my mother tucked up in bed beside him and saying, you know, Marty, darling, when you're ready, you can go because we're all here and we're fine.
Yeah.
And my hand on his pulse, you know, he looked around and took a big breath and his pulse just went boom, boom, boom. It was terribly sad, but it was also how it should be. You know, it was a good death.
Good death.
Yeah.
Having been a nurse, you decided to become a cook, because I'm not allowed to say chef now.
Yeah, I would know you say chef, yeah.
How did you go about that?
Well, I suppose, you know, that interest and passion in cooking, but I certainly didn't leave school and think, you know, one day I'll be on the telly waving my wire whisk and holding a conversation simultaneously. But I worked for 5 years on the British Heart Research team in London and based in university at the Royal Free Hospital in London. And I'd always wanted to do a cordon bleu course. You know, I'd heard that this was pretty groovy.
Because nobody quite knows what that refers to, that, but we just know it's magic.
It is magic,
yeah,
yes, terribly important. But it's a wonderful cooking school, you know, very well-established cooking school in London. And so I went along. A lot of people did the bride's course, you know, how to cook your husband the poached eggs. Yes.
Right,
No,
good.
I didn't want to do that one.
No.
I slightly, and I'm not quite sure what the polite word is, a little hint of bullshitting. Not sure if that's the polite word, but snuck into a more advanced course than... Most of the people were chefs and ran delis and things on this advanced sort of catering course, but it taught me wonderful science of cooking and, you know, why the albumin in the egg white reacts with the copper bowl.
Right,
and, But I realised at the end of that was for 6 months, and at the end of it I realised that I actually needed that passion and gusto and flavours. And in those days, we had to go to the continent.
Right.
You know, that was the
Where
big
real
thing.
cooking happened.
Yeah, real cooking, you know, and we're talking late 70s.
Yes.
So I went to Paris, I went to La Varenne Cooking School and did further training there. But I find it quite interesting now that young chefs do their formal training, and now they have to come to the new world. And they come to New Zealand and Australia and Pacific Rim and learn all that fusion, sometimes fusion, confusion with cooking, but, you know, all that sort
But there's a lot of energy around the fusion thing, which is quite exciting, yeah.
And it's quite brave. It's what we do well in New Zealand. We're not kind of guided by, you know, this is the way you always do it.
You came back to New Zealand.
Yes.
And founded one of the really important restaurants.
Well, it's kind of you to say. We loved it. Our nursing friend and I, Helen Brabazon, she and I had been working overseas, and we came back and set up Harley's restaurant. Harley's, that we'd all worked in Harley Street. All our staff were doctors and nurses, physios, occupational therapists. And, it was great. We were a New Zealand restaurant. Everyone else... You know, it was a Chinese or a French or whatever. I mean, restaurants in those days, think back, they were called El Matador or
That's
something.
right.
That was it.
Yep.
And, you know, sort of, you did kind of prawn cocktails. We were a New Zealand restaurant that actually did have tuatua fritters, and we did wonderful lamb and pavlovas. And
New Zealand,
it was a great time.
Yeah.
And Metro magazine had just started, 1981, I think we were talking. And... they voted us the best restaurant in Auckland, you know, so it was a success story.
And one of the great benefits for you was you met Ross.
Yes, ran off with the waiter. Yes, that was a bit exciting. Ran off with the waiter, and he's been waiting on me ever since. 23 years marriage.
You married Ross, and you've discovered that you couldn't have children. How did you react to that?
That was a kind of one of the big things in our lives. I think everyone thinks for years you're trying not to have children.
Yes.
And you think it's your God-given right,
Yeah.
that's something that's unquestionable. And for us, it made us stronger as a couple. Ross was a baby in the 1960s measles epidemic. So our chances were very rare, 1 in a trillion zillion or something. Right. So at least we found out.
Yeah, that's right.
And we looked at all the options, and the arrival of Kate was definitely the answer of a prayer. We hadn't waited long. By the time we'd gone through the process of adoption, gone to the meetings, we were on the list about 6 weeks.
Goodness me.
And we opted for open adoption, and birth mothers choose where their children will be parented.
Fantastic.
And we had this delicious baby, and we used to look at her and think, oh, she's better than we could have made. We still think
That's
that.
nice. Yeah. And you've kept a relationship with the birth mother?
Yes, with Katie's one, it was different. We were certainly in touch for a year, and we did letters and photographs, and after a year, and Kate's birth mother had said that she will break the connection. She didn't know how, but suddenly a letter came back, and then another one, address unknown.
Okay.
I saved those letters, and she had given me letters and things for Kate to have over the years. When Kate was 1 year old, the social worker said, well, apply again, because I know you'd like it. I always thought I'd have about 6 children, but we applied again, and she said it could be 4 or 5 years, and you never know if you'll be chosen again. And a fortnight later, we had Guy. So we've got sort of 2 children a year apart, which was, wonderful.
Beyond your wildest dreams.
And with Guy's birth family, we kept much closer. But it's been wonderful. And Guy's birth grandmother and my mother are the greatest of friends. He has a lovely relationship with his birth brother and things. But when Kate was off to boarding school, I wrote a story, I was interviewed about adoption for the Women's Weekly, and over the years I'd always shown photos of my children in the book, especially because I knew Kate's mother would be looking, and she knew who we were. And I wrote in this article that I would be very open to her being in touch. And the day it went to the stands, we got the phone call. And it's wonderful, and I've kept that phone call on that message. It came as a message.
Yes.
And, we got home from somewhere, and it was about 8 at night. Kate had gone to bed, and I said, Kate, you've got to get up and come and listen to this. And a wonderful feeling, how splendid. And we got in touch, and when we went down to boarding school, we drove down, and and her family, she and her husband and children were living in Nelson. And it was wonderful because they had a gorgeous family party. Grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, everybody there. And she said, I'm going to make a speech. And Ross and I kind of clutched each other and thought, oh my gosh, what is this? Is this okay? We've got a pretty vulnerable 13-year-old. And she got up and she said, I've thought about you every day of your life. She said, I saw a vision for you of walking out with a school bag up a country road. And, I often used to look at Kate getting off the bus, coming up the road and think, that's what she was thinking about. But she said, I was pregnant at 17. I wasn't ready to parent. And I chose Jo and Ross from the files. And of all the files, I looked at everybody in the South Island and then got the North Island. And it suddenly meant that you were the ones. And she said, and when I gave you to Jo and Ross and physically gave her to us, she said, I've never regretted my decision. And it was the best thing for Kate too. And I think, because I love my children this much doesn't mean that she's not allowed a bit of this.
Right.
It's not like this is how much you get, and if you've got
it's
that,
not a ration
I can't.
thing, is it?
No, and it's wonderful. And Guy said to me once, he said, I've got a lot of mothers. He said, I've got grandmothers and godmothers and birth mothers and you, Mum. And I thought it was quite nice. The more people that love a child, the better.
Absolutely.
Guy had a wonderful thing when in the 7th form at the end of his time at Christ College. They have a lovely party and you can have a table, and you can have your granny and your mother and father and cousins and brothers, and he chose to have his birth grandmother and his brother and his birth mother. And there was a moment when the headmaster got up and made the speech, and he said, "Okay, boys, this is the moment we've practiced. You've got to get up and dance with your mother." And some people didn't have mothers, obviously, and they danced with granny or but Guy got us both up, and we had a little waltzing with 3. It's tricky, but hey, we did it, and it was a wonderful thing. It was a wonderful thing, and there's been moments that I've been so happy. There's no downsides of open adoption.
That's fantastic.
It's fantastic.
It's a fantastic story.
I tried a long time for television. I'd done some cooking classes. I liked the medium of teaching.
Yes.
I had a lot of trouble with sponsorship and things. Very clearly somebody said to me when I went to TV and they said, it's really hard to sponsor because we cannot be seen to sponsor a fat person. And I thought this was kind of interesting. And this is where I sort of thought, my program would be real food for real people, and the title.
There it is, yes.
Welcome back. Now, boys and girls, this is the easiest, peasiest loaf recipe around. Banana loaf with those knocks in life help you get up stronger, and for me it was one of those ones, right, I'll show them.
Yes.
And eventually, when it finally came on television, it was the highest rating program Television New Zealand had done in the year. So, and it was on prime time, Tuesday night, 7:30 or something.
Oh, Jo, you look gorgeous, mate.
Oh, thank you, darling. And haven't you done a great job with the table? Red roses too. This is my romantic guest tonight, my husband Ross, all you people who thought he was a figment of my imagination.
But at a certain point with all this, the television and the books and the restaurants, and you made a decision to leave Auckland and to start something new. Talk about brave.
Well, it was, I think it was brave, but some people thought we were rather foolish. We had a dinner party, and I think it was a late night thing, and maybe a hint too much fruit juice had been drunk, if you get my drift.
Indeed, I do.
If you get my drift. And people were all sitting around doing that sort of bucket list thing, 50 things to do before I die. And Ross said, "Well, darling, what will we like to do?" And I said, "Well, I have this little dream of a bit of a country cooking school." And he said, "I'd quite like to have my own company and, it's running big corporations and things." But he's an accountant trained, and we thought, well, let's do that. We don't seem to be able to go to the supermarket without a coffee now, so we could perhaps have a cafe. Right. And, we had this discussion, and then nothing much more. But then someone at the dinner party told someone who made us an offer on our property. I think, was it 9 or 11 seconds we made the decision. And, the downside was, could you be out in 3 weeks?
Right, suddenly.
A lot of people thought, you're nuts, how crazy. And you turn away all these jobs and prospects. But for us, it was very much that idea that let's do less things better.
Right.
Oxford was very much the right place. Crazy, but it was on mains, water and sewerage. I know that sounds silly, but in a food business, this is huge.
Yeah.
And it had a hospital and a high school and a retirement village, a rest home, library.
Great.
Police station, lots of things, supermarket, but no cafe. It's been a wonderful, welcoming community, and 6 new businesses have happened in the town. There's lovely bookshop and gourmet deli and crafty shops and things that have sprung up. Oh yeah, how are you?
Are there disadvantages for you in being the celebrity cook?
Well, look, I think it's quite funny. I opened the supermarket and, people always look in your trolley, Chris. And I can remember chatting to people, and they say, "Oh, it's Jo Seagar," chat. And then going round and being on the other aisle, grabbing the cornflakes or something and hearing the conversation over the aisle. And one woman said, "Did you see she had mallow puffs in the trolley?" And then the other woman said, yeah, you think she'd make her own, don't you?
Oh, I love it.
Make your own mallet
Well,
pussy.
yeah,
Hello.
Tell us a little bit about the role the church plays in your life today in Oxford.
Right, well, I'm a member of the Anglican Church in Oxford. I'm not a particularly good attendee of services, but certainly, the big times, and I think Anglicans would probably always say this, I definitely would do a Good Friday and an Easter Sunday and a Christmas and those things. But I'm just, the future, I'm not sure that I'll be one of those old ladies in the fourth pew. I don't know quite if that's
Where that's going.
Yes, exactly.
Blessed are you, God of all creation. Through your goodness we have this wine to offer, fruit of the vine and work of human hands.
Do you think God, for you and for your family, is a backdrop against which you live your lives, or somehow a more active player?
For me, it's been the solid thing.
The kind of foundational thing.
Some people wish for things. I pray for them.
Right.
Okay. Some people say, I wish to win the lotto. I sometimes pray that might be a good thing, would it change some vast eternal plan if I was a wealthy man? But I kind of feel that through tricky things in my life, God has always been with me. So when dramas happen, why would he leave me now? That kind of attitude, yeah.
And all the ends of the earth have seen your victory. Shout with joy to the Lord, all the earth.
I love the rhythm. I love sitting in church now and knowing, I believe in God the Father, maker of heaven and earth. And the seasonal when you talk
again.
about it.
Yeah.
I quite like knowing when Michaelmas is.
Yes.
And don't ask me, I can't remember. But I love
the
that.
Seasons of the church year.
Ash Wednesday, Shrove Tuesday. I like all those sort of things, and the foodie things that come with it.
The connections with that are wonderful, aren't they?
Yeah, Pancake Day and all those kind of things. Right, okay, we're ready. Are you ready?
When you think about your work and that whole operation, and I guess your wider family, what would you describe as the kind of spiritual values that are reflected through all that?
People talk about their passion or their art, and some people paint, and that's how they express it. For me, it's feeding people. I love that sort of Mother Earth thing, and I love gathering people around the table. Breaking bread seems to me, together, the oldest thing in the world, and a chance for us to be thankful and, so lucky to be, sitting in that cast of characters. Yeah. I feel, very strongly about that.
And every puppy right past, Jenny, they're really watching the road. I think, no, they're not too young.
Supporting local content so you can see more of New Zealand on air.